but we're pleased to speak with Mr. Tony Agwins, researcher, senior lecturer, Anglo-Ruskin University, joining us from London. It's good to have you with us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Olumide.
If two countries were ever fast allies, it will be Britain and the US. It's tradition for every new prime minister to try to cement, improve these relations. But with the shadow of the Ukrainian conflict and the war precipitated by Russia, do you think this meeting between Sunak and President Biden will further help that relationship?
Yeah, thank you very much. You are very much spot on there. The UK and the United States, they are, very good allies, good friends. The two nations, in diplomatic circles, sometimes we describe it as a very sweet romantic relationship that has been for many years. No matter who, is leading both countries, right, any prime minister or president of the US, as the case may be. So you will see that since the new UK prime minister came on board, talking about the very young Rishi Sunak, he's had this very good chemistry with President Joe Biden of the United States. And like you stated in that report there, the US press secretary, she was saying they've met a couple of times since Sunak came on board about 7 months ago. So this meeting is again an opportunity for both nations to declare their support for one another and pursuing their common goals, most of which is economic anyway, as you would expect in international relations. So we expect another round of strengthening of relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. And more so, we also expect that the crisis between Russia and Ukraine is going to be on the front burner.
Indeed, whether it was Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, we can go back as far as Winston Churchill, UK prime ministers have always held that tradition of being close to the US. But in the case of Rishi Sunak, given the way he came to power, and given, well, it's not really mentioned, but given that he's the first of Indian descent, do you think he has a point to prove in international relations? He seems to be doing well with Mr. Zelensky.
Oh yes, he has a very big point to prove. If you look at the heritage of Rishi Sunak coming from an Indian background, and rising up first to becoming chancellor in the UK Parliament, in the UK government, I mean, and then becoming prime minister, it shows how the UK society has developed, the level of diversity, inclusion. Even though people still complain here, but when you look at the level of accommodation, the level of tolerating people from other climes that come to the United Kingdom, you will appreciate that it's a very good society and it's an example of a very inclusive nation. And then when you look at the US, as it were, you also see that there are people from diverse backgrounds, Spanish origin, Latinos. We've had a governor in the US, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's from an Austrian background. He was governor of California for 8 years and did 2 tenures. So, and the other examples. So when you look at these two nations and know whether they are where they are, they welcome people from every part of the world and everybody bringing different skill sets to the table. And then you begin to wonder, that is why probably they are one of the leading developed nations in the world. They welcome people. And then when you look into Ukraine, you will see that it is one of the things that Ukraine is also trying to do. They want to open up their society. They want to, relate with more of the Western nations, adopt more of Western culture and tradition, and, begin to build alliances with the West. And this is one of the reasons why the Russian, aggression came to be, and because Ukraine wants to join NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's all about relationship, alliances, and developing partnerships.
Finally, on this particular topic, concerning the visit of Sunak to President Biden, are you concerned about the hardline position both countries have taken, effectively distancing themselves from the negotiation table? After all, during World War II, they were all on the same side: Russia, America, and Britain.
Yes, I'm very, very concerned, and I'm sure most of us and most observers of global affairs, there's a lot of concern. Most of us think that the approach by the West, especially led by the US, Germany, France, and the UK, could have been maybe a bit more softer. This is just my opinion, because this, like you put it, this hardline posture of the use of force, show of force, it's not helping this crisis. And I was listening to your report. We haven't getting to a stage where it could escalate to a nuclear crisis and the use of nuclear weapons. So I'm very, very concerned about the hardline posture.
Speaking of which, the nuclear possibility of this war, it should be a no-brainer, really, that the Zaporizhzhia power plant is a no-go area for both sides. Why does Rafael Grossi have to seem to cajole and to convince both parties to be safe concerning activity around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant?
Oh yes. The International Atomic Energy Agency, they are really worried because, at the start of the Russian aggression in February last year, precisely 17 months ago, Russia took control of the territory, where the nuclear power plant is. And we all know that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest in Europe. It's majorly for electricity. But being a nuclear facility, there are a lot of reactors there. But the Russians, they are in control of the territory, and the IAEA have always maintained that weapons should not be stored there. There should not be artillery fire from that, the perimeter of that power plant. But to surprise you to know that a lot of the power supply to that plant has been consistently being cut off. As we speak, that power plant, with a lot of reactors that need to be cooled all the time, they are now being powered by generators. And the IAEA, like Grossi was saying, is that at any time there could be a meltdown. And if there's a meltdown, it's going to lead to a serious nuclear crisis. Let's not forget what happened in Chechnya in Russia some years ago. Nobody wished to see a nuclear power plant, melting down. The crisis is going to have huge reverberations across the world. So the IAEA chief is very, very much well in his right to express his concern. And everybody is concerned because with the way this crisis is going, I may not be surprised, maybe a drone attack or artillery fire, missile dropping there, and then there could be a nuclear crisis on our hands.
Or should we just say both sides are just rattling their sabers? They know that they can't do anything that can put the entire region and maybe even the world in harm's way by continuing any activity that could threaten the safety of the nuclear power plant.
Yeah, the thing is, when it comes to a military crisis like this, you really cannot predict what is going to happen. You see, since this crisis started, there have been attacks, missile attacks, drone attacks, and then there is an indirect impact, misfire. So that is the fear of everybody, who have idea about military warfare and all the rest. There could be an error fire. And then that could be it. So that is just the fear everybody is nursing. But let's just hope and be on the side of hope and positivity that such a fatal error doesn't happen. But the probability of it happening is very, very high. And I would say like 9 out of 10.
Wow. Well, for all our sakes, I hope that you're not correct. But to the Moscow incident with the drone attacks, President Putin says, and it's not surprising that he said that they were targeting civilians in this particular case. But if you listen to the mayor of Moscow, and if you listen to the people of Moscow, they've all said that they don't think that was the case. In some interviews, they think that possibly they were targeting somewhere else, and they ended up at that residential area. But given that that residential area is for the rich and the wealthy, where the high net worth individuals in Moscow have residences, maybe that is not the case. Do you think Ukraine was specifically targeting civilians in this case?
You know, I think a few weeks ago I was on this program, and we were also talking about the attack on the Kremlin, the true drone attack on the Kremlin, and there were a lot of conspiracy theory around it. Was it a flag operation by the Russians themselves? Was it a propaganda kind of scenario? You know, Russia looking for an opportunity to really go all out and hit Ukraine with their military might. So there were a lot of, talk around it, and nobody really understood it. And then I think investigation is still going on. Now, for the attack on the Moscow region, region with over 20 million inhabitants, like you said, a lot of wealthy people being there, and nobody can categorically state who sent the drones. I think about 8 were sent. But this is my personal opinion. Looking at the military might of Russia, or maybe it's just perception, how these drones could have evaded their defense system, is something that everybody is pondering. So again, just like what happened with the Kremlin attack some few weeks back, people are saying now that could this again be a propaganda, another flag operation by the Russians themselves? Could this actually be from Ukraine? They are just testing the waters. So nobody is really sure. But the other concern that came in is that why some people are calling for forensic investigation to know, because all these drones and missiles, they can actually determine the source from the location from where it was shot from. So that can be done, using technology. So people are calling for that investigation. But then when you look at the how do I put it? The different opinion coming from the US and the UK, that is a kind of worry. Ukraine, President Zelensky have said the drone was not shot by them. It's not from Ukraine. And then the UK Defense Secretary, James Cleverly, have said, Ukraine, they can do whatever they can do outside their border to protect their citizens. So that is a big worry. And then the US have come up with a statement to say that they do not support any attack from Ukraine into Russian territory. And then you have people on the other side who are saying, oh, hang on, but the Russians have been, bombarding Kyiv, Zaporizhzhia, Mariupol, a lot of Ukrainian cities. They've been doing it. So why is it that just now that this has happened, why they worry? And just last night, early this morning, there was another attack on a Russian oil refinery. So, Olumide, when you look at this crisis, I think it's just expanding in a kind of, in a way that nobody really expected at this time.
Thank you so much for your contribution today. To pick up on something you said, if the Russians have gone to the extent of attacking their own facilities to garner support from their own people and to make Ukraine look bad, then they've descended to levels that show extreme desperation. But the jury's out. We don't know if that was the case. Thank you so much Mr. Tony Agwins, researcher, senior lecturer, Anglia Ruskin University, who joined us from London.
Thank you, Olumide. Have a nice day.